summer of 1997, a young woman named Kara Mills rented a small apartment above an old hardware store in the sleepy town of East Haven, Maine. The rent was cheap, the nights were quiet, and the place had a certain charm. But one thing stood out as odd. The official floor plan she was given showed a second bedroom, a room that, for all she could see, simply didn't exist. On her very first night in the apartment, as the evening fog rolled in from the coast, Kara couldn't shake the feeling that the hallway leading to her bedroom felt longer than it should. It was an unsettling, almost optical illusion. Standing in front of the linen closet, she ran her hand along the faded floral wallpaper. On a whim, she tapped a section of the wall just behind the closet door. It returned a hollow, empty sound. The next day, she mentioned it to her landlord, a gruff but friendly older man. He just laughed it off. "Oh, that's just an old blueprint error," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Building's 100 years old, full of quirks." But the quirks didn't stop there. Every night, like clockwork, she would hear it. A faint, rhythmic scraping sound coming from that exact spot on the wall. The sound of wood dragging against wood just on the other side. Kara tried to ignore it, telling herself it was just the old building settling, or maybe mice. But the sound was too deliberate, too consistent. It began to consume her thoughts. She found herself staring at that wall for hours, her ear pressed against the cold plaster, trying to make sense of the noise. The mystery was too much to bear. She borrowed a stud finder from her neighbor, a construction worker who lived downstairs. As she slid the device across the wall, it beeped erratically. It confirmed her suspicion. There was a gap, a void. A space roughly 6 feet wide, sealed away behind layers of plaster and forgotten wallpaper. The scraping sound was just the beginning. Soon, she started hearing other things. A whisper, soft static, like an old radio tuned between stations, seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. She went through the apartment, unplugging every single electronic device. The TV, the clock, her small kitchen radio. But the static remained, a constant, low hum in the air. Then one night as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the overhead light in her bedroom clicked on by itself, flooding the room with a sudden harsh glare. The lack of sleep and the constant, unexplained phenomena were taking their toll. Kara knew she couldn't live like this. She called her landlord again, this time more insistent, explaining everything she had experienced. Reluctantly, he agreed to have a look. The next morning, a pair of workers arrived. When they finally tore down that section of the wall behind the closet, the dust cleared to reveal something that made everyone fall silent. It wasn't just an empty space. It was a door, sealed shut from the outside with plaster and paint, but with a deadbolt on the frame that was locked from the inside. When they forced it open, they found a small, windowless room. Inside, there was nothing but a dirty mattress on the floor, a small battery-powered cassette recorder, and a worn-out journal. The last entry, dated nearly a decade earlier, was a single, chilling sentence. "He told me the noise stops when I forget it." A quick check of police records revealed the horrifying truth. The previous tenant of that apartment, a man named Evan Price, had vanished without a trace back in 1988. He was never seen again. After the grim discovery, the room was sealed up again, properly this time. The investigation went nowhere, and the case of Evan Price remained cold. Kara, understandably, moved out almost immediately. She couldn't stand to be in that apartment for another minute. But the story doesn't end there. Months later, the new tenants who moved in began to complain to the landlord about a strange tapping sound coming from behind the linen closet. When the town records office was asked for the hardware store's blueprints, the file had been updated. The new plan showed only one bedroom. The second, non-existent room had been erased from history. As for Cora, the locals in East Haven say she never truly left that apartment behind. They say that every year, on the anniversary of her moving in, a letter arrives at that address. It's always addressed to Cara Mills. From Cara Mills, thank you for joining me on this unsettling journey. There's a small town in northern Minnesota called Mill Creek. Population, barely 3,000. The kind of place where everybody knows everyone, and the woods around town feel older than the people who live there. But in the fall of 2012, something happened that Mill Creek still doesn't talk about. Some said it was a power surge, others a gas leak explosion. But what the sheriff found out there was neither of those things. Tonight, we're going to look at what really happened when the lights came to Mill Creek, October 19th, 2012. Just after 11 p.m., the entire town lost power. Street lights dimmed, TV screens went black, even car alarms cut off mid-wail. People stepped out onto their porches, thinking it was another grid failure. But then, they saw it. A green-white light gliding above the northern ridge. Too low for a plane, too smooth for a helicopter, and too quiet to be anything they'd ever heard. Within minutes, the phone lines were jammed with 911 calls, each describing a strange metallic hum, like steel bending underwater. When the power finally came back at sunrise, one house on Ridge Road was missing. Not burned, not collapsed, just gone. The house belonged to the McLarens, Tim, June, and their daughter, Ava. Tim worked at the local sawmill. June taught 3rd grade. Ava was 6 and liked drawing clouds. When the neighbors went to check on them that morning, they found only a perfect rectangle of blackened soil. No wreckage, no ash, not even the nails that held the floorboards. And in the center of the clearing, standing upright, still attached to its hinges, was their front door. The paint was blistered. The brass knob burned black. But when the sheriff touched it, it was gold. That same night, a local radio operator named Howard Beale was testing his ham radio. He kept a tape running during the blackout, something he'd done every weekend for 30 years. What he caught shouldn't have been possible. The recording starts with that same mechanical hum, distant but rhythmic, and then a child's voice, whispering, 3, 7, 0. It's coming back. Analysts later called it cross-frequency interference, maybe a baby monitor signal, but Howard swore the channel was dead. Near the end of the tape, the hum stops, and a whisper, barely audible, says, "Open the door." Over the next 48 hours, search teams combed every mile of forest north of Ridge Road. No debris, no personal items, nothing. Then, a forestry student named Connor Hale radioed in something strange near the old fire tower. He'd found a ring of lights half buried in the ground, each the size of a coin, glowing faintly blue, pulsing like breathing. When he touched one, it went dark, and every compass in the area started spinning wildly. The next morning, Connor called in sick. That evening, his tent was empty. By the weekend, unmarked vans lined Ridge Road. Men in plain clothes fenced off the area, posted radiation signs, and told residents it was a chemical spill. Local news ran one short report, then deleted the footage. Howard Beale moved away that winter. Before he left, he told his neighbor, "It's not what they said it was." It never was. 10 years later, in 2022, new owners began building a cabin on the same land. While digging the foundation, their contractor struck something metallic. A door hinge blackened and half melted. The moment it touched air, every light in Mill Creek flickered out. For 6 seconds, complete silence. Then, the emergency radio channel came alive. A child's voice, distant but clear. 3, 7, 0. It's coming back. The feed cut. The lights returned. And that was the last transmission Mill Creek ever received. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Thank you for listening.